Somehow I have the energy for grief. Grief is the third spoke in the wheel of the seven core issues in adoption and permanency. Grief is the gateway to healing. Most human suffering is connected to love and loss. Pain will be experienced as part of the reality of living and loving. Acknowledging loss and making room for the work of grief is essential to any healing process. The term work is used because grief is just that. It's messy, hard, labor intensive, and feels never ending. Grieving includes remembering, recollecting, feeling, questioning, and reorganizing. People may wonder, will I get through this? How do I find the words to express what I'm feeling? Will my bones always hurt like this? Will I ever be the same? Why did this happen to me? Am I being punished? What did I do wrong? In today's culture, there are few models for healthy grieving. People live in a quick fix society where individuals are expected to get over things rapidly and simply move on. Children are not taught how to cope with loss. Children are often teased, bullied, or scolded for crying. People work hard to avoid the pain of grief. Unacknowledged grief and pain can accumulate, simmer, and turn into bitterness, depression, and anger. Here are some myths and facts about grief. People get over their grief. It is not true that if you do it right, you will have closure. The truth is that emotional memory cannot be erased. Pain will go away faster if it is ignored. Keep yourself busy. In reality, the pain becomes a boulder in the road, a boiling pot that will overflow on the back burner. The truth is that it takes a lot of psychic energy to not think about something. Addressing the grief is short-term pain for long-term gain. It is important to be strong in the face of loss. Being stoic, minimizing your deep feelings connected to the loss, or repressing the pain can superficially send a message that you have not been affected by something tragic. The truth is that humans are built to connect through emotion. Sorrow shared is halved. Grief should last about a year and be finished. The truth is that the second year after a loss may feel even worse as numbness has diminished and people's support may dwindle. Tears are a sign of weakness. The truth is that tears release intense feelings and remove toxins from the body that build up when you are stressed and sad. People shouldn't talk about loss. The belief is that discussing painful feelings makes people feel uncomfortable. The truth is that it is important to talk about all of our feelings, including the ones that are the most difficult to share or hear. Children should be sheltered from grief. The truth is that children need honesty, a loving presence, a comforting tone, and reassurance that everyone has losses. A family rule that may help a child in their grief is, "Our family grieves together." Bring your pain, sadness, or anger to mommy or daddy. Families that grieve together heal together. If you finish grieving and get on with your life, you will forget the lost person. The truth is that love lasts beyond grief. Your lost loved ones live in you, in your memories, and in your heart. There is nothing to grieve. Just be positive and have gratitude for the time you had together. The truth is that if you try to avoid the grief, you will diminish the joy and positives you received from that relationship. When you numb the pain, you also numb the joy. People can't grieve for people they didn't know. The truth is that people can feel sadness never having known a person. They lost the potential of that relationship. You will get over it and return to being the same person you were before the loss. The truth is that profound loss changes people forever. It changes worldviews and how people live their lives. Impact of grief on adoptees and individuals raised in kinship and foster families. Infants and children are the most impacted members of the adoption and permanency constellation. The adoption and permanency decisions that occurred in reaction to a crisis shifted their life at a time when they had no input. They may not have had the language, understanding, or the rights to ask questions, to protest, or express their needs and desires in order to influence the outcome of the crisis. Children are adaptable, malleable, and resilient. A child can learn any language, adapt to any culture, and learn the cultural norms in order to survive. Babies are naturally resilient, which means they can bounce back from adversity or stress. For most babies, being in a home with unfamiliar caregivers is distressing, but because of their resiliency, they can adapt. If the caregivers can properly attune to the baby's needs while the baby is distressed, the baby can adapt more quickly. Children are deeply aware and impacted by everything that is happening to them. When children are transplanted from one environment to an unfamiliar other environment or family, they are thrust into survival mode. Children must adapt to a whole new life that includes new smells, new sounds, new faces, new foods, and new routines. Their very existence depends on them adapting to their new world. However, children who repeatedly change caregivers lose their access to resiliency and adaptation as they are living in a state of chronic distress. Without the attunement that a consistent primary attachment caregiver provides because they know the unique needs of the child they are parenting, the child may remain distressed and dysregulated. Amanda, a resource foster mother and an experienced parent, asked for assistance because she could not comfort and soothe an 8-month-old baby girl who was newly placed in her care. This was the baby's third move, and she had a strong attachment to her previous caregiver. Amanda stated that the baby cried and would not allow anyone to hold, touch, or soothe her. She reported that the baby would push away from her, not look directly at her, would not mold and fold into her body, and was distressed by her very presence. Babies and children grieve the loss of caregivers with whom they have developed a trusting and meaningful relationship. Caregivers are not interchangeable cogs in a wheel. Children's grief reactions and their ability to process and express their grief is contingent on their developmental stage, not their chronological age. For example, a 5-year-old who has experienced multiple attachment disruptions may be functioning developmentally at the age at which their first attachment disruption occurred. Children's responses to loss and grief are typically very different from those of an adult. Children communicate their distress through their physiology and behaviors. Due to their social, emotional, cognitive, and brain development, most children have not yet attained the skills necessary to verbalize their feelings. Subsequently, parents may see more acting out behaviors as children emote and discharge toxic stress, grief, and pain. Parents are therefore tasked with decoding their child's behaviors and attuning with their internal emotional states. Painful and distressing feelings in children are typically repressed and/or displaced. This most often leads to reactive and impulsive behaviors. Children who have suffered significant life-altering losses often express distress and anger in response to the loss, crisis, or disruption. Parents can easily misread the child's grief and adjustment response and respond to the child by being punitive, angry, withholding, and reactive. It is helpful for parents to understand that it is typical for children to feel overwhelmed, angry, and sad in response to their traumatic losses as they struggle to cope and adapt. The child needs reassurance that their grown-ups understand their distress and can respond in ways that comfort, soothe, and relieve the distress, pain, and/or confusion. The child needs assistance from their caregiver in learning helpful ways to both understand and express their upset and their sad and angry feelings. A child who lacks a secure attachment relationship is alone with their overwhelming grief. If the child experiences additional losses, these coping strategies will continue and intensify. Children's ability to understand their story, what happened to them, and hence grieve is always connected to their stage of development. Therefore, children grieve again and again from infancy through adolescence and into adulthood as their understanding of their losses unfolds.